The emergency lights had been blinking for so long that nobody aboard the refugee carrier Valen's Hope remembered what normal illumination looked like anymore. Their dull crimson glow painted every corridor in the color of dried blood, turning exhausted faces into hollow masks. The air recycling units coughed every few seconds, pushing stale oxygen through vents coated with frost. Somewhere deep inside the aging vessel, another warning alarm failed. Not because the danger had passed, but because the system had finally run out of power to announce it. Captain Kalen sat motionless on the bridge, staring through the cracked forward viewport. Beyond the glass stretched an ocean of black scattered with distant stars that no longer looked beautiful. They looked indifferent. Life support reserves? The question barely rose above a whisper. Officer Nira swallowed before answering. 16 hours, if everyone remained still. Nobody spoke after that. There had once been 211 souls aboard the vessel. Families, engineers, teachers, children who had never seen war until it swallowed their homeworld whole. Now only 128 remained alive. Hunger had carved sharp lines into every face. Exhaustion made simple conversations feel like impossible labor. The youngest survivor, a small girl named Lyra, had stopped asking when they would reach home. She had started asking whether stars could feel lonely. Kalen had no answer. He remembered the first distress signal they transmitted 12 days earlier. It had been polite, following every regulation of Galactic emergency protocol. This is civilian vessel Valen's Hope. Engine failure. Casualties sustained. Requesting humanitarian assistance. No response. The second transmission included casualty reports. Still nothing. The fifth contained medical records, proving dozens would die without treatment. Silence. By the ninth transmission, Kalen abandoned protocol. If anyone hears this, his recorded voice had cracked with exhaustion. Please, we are not soldiers. There are children aboard. We ask only for fuel, medicine, anything. The message disappeared into the darkness. No reply ever came. The governments of civilized space had calculated the cost of rescue against the value of strangers, and quietly chosen mathematics over mercy. No fleet came. No diplomats argued. No heroes arrived. Only silence answered. In the medical compartment, Dr. Saris worked beneath failing lights that flickered with every surge of the dying reactor. She had no anesthetics left, no antibiotics, no nutritional supplements. Every treatment required choosing who might survive another day and who would quietly slip away before morning. Her hands never stopped moving. Bandages were washed until they dissolved. Medical tools were sharpened beyond their intended lifespan. She had not slept in 42 hours. When one elderly refugee thanked her for saving his grandson instead of him, Saris had turned away before he could see her crying. The boy survived. The grandfather did not. Nobody aboard spoke about the bodies anymore. There wasn't enough energy to maintain the preservation chambers. The stars kept watching. Nearly 40,000 light-years away, Earth rotated beneath heavy cloud systems and violent oceans. From orbit, it looked restless, scarred by weather, powerful enough to destroy cities and tectonic forces that constantly reshaped continents. Most galactic civilizations had classified it with a single warning: death world, high gravity, aggressive biosphere, predatory wildlife, violent climate, psychologically unstable dominant species. Recommended observation only. The irony was almost amusing. The universe feared the humans. The humans spent most of their lives rescuing one another from hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, fires, and disasters born from the very planet that raised them. Perhaps compassion grew strongest where survival was never guaranteed. Hidden beneath layers of reinforced mountain rock in northern Canada, listening station Kestrel monitored frequencies few people remembered existed. Ancient radio astronomy arrays had been upgraded into interstellar receivers decades earlier. Most shifts were painfully uneventful. Senior Communications Officer Maya Alvarez rubbed tired eyes while scanning another endless stream of background noise. Static, pulsar emissions, civilian navigation beacons, silence. Then, please, her fingers froze above the console. The signal was weak, almost buried beneath cosmic interference. Children aboard. Maya increased gain. The voice returned. Anyan hears this. Every word carried exhaustion. Every pause sounded like someone fighting to remain conscious. She replayed it 3 times, then once more. Room conversations faded as technicians slowly realized everyone had stopped working. Maya looked toward Station Commander David Ross. I think, she said carefully, someone is dying. Ross listened without speaking. When the recording ended, he asked only one question. Can we locate them? The navigation team worked in complete silence. Triangulation, signal delay analysis, gravitational correction. Finally, a star map appeared, one lonely blinking marker. Far beyond established human borders. Far beyond any region Earth officially claimed. Ross stared at it. Notify the Defense Council. Within 2 hours, representatives from every major government appeared through secure holographic conference links. Military commanders studied the situation alongside humanitarian officials and scientific advisors. The debate began immediately. They're outside our territory. We have no diplomatic agreements. The rescue fleet would require nearly every long-range carrier we possess. What if it's a trap? What if whoever attacked them is still there? Admiral Marcus Hale remained silent until everyone else had spoken. His face carried the weathered calm of someone who had spent 30 years making impossible decisions. Finally, he leaned forward. "What concerns me," he said quietly, "is that nobody else answered." The room fell still. He continued. "We've spent decades wondering how the galaxy would judge humanity." Another pause. "Perhaps today isn't about their opinion of us. It's about ours," a younger politician objected. "We could lose ships," Marcus nodded. "We could. We could lose people. We could. And if we do nothing?" Marcus looked directly at him. "Then those children die knowing someone heard them and chose silence." Nobody answered. The vote lasted less than 30 seconds. Authorization granted. Humanity's first deep space humanitarian fleet activated. Across Earth, enormous dry docks erupted into motion. Massive industrial warships detached from orbital construction frames with deep mechanical groans. They lacked elegant curves favored by alien civilizations. Their hulls were thick slabs of layered armor, scarred from years of training exercises and rescue operations. Every vessel looked built less for beauty than for refusing to break. Dock workers sprinted through steel corridors carrying ammunition and medical supplies together, because humans had learned long ago that rescue often required surviving the fight first. Hospital ships loaded thousands of emergency beds. Engineers checked slipspace drives until their hands bled from tightening frozen bolts. Combat medics packed surgical kits beside family photographs. Nobody asked whether strangers were worth saving. They asked how quickly they could leave. Commander Marcus Hale walked through the flagship Resolute without ceremony. Crew members acknowledged him with brief nods before returning to work. Heavy boots echoed across metal decks while forklifts carried relief containers toward waiting cargo bays. Lieutenant Sophia Grant intercepted him near Hangar 3. Medical Division reports full readiness. Engineering, drive cores operating above expected efficiency. Escort wings, standing by. Marcus nodded once. Then he noticed a mechanic still welding armor plates onto the bow, despite sparks raining across his visor. "We're already fully armored," Marcus observed. The mechanic smiled without looking up. "Maybe." He struck another brilliant arc across the steel. "But if we're putting ourselves between civilians and enemy fire," another shower of sparks. "I'd rather have one more layer." Marcus stood there for several seconds before quietly moving on. No speech could have inspired the crew more than that single sentence. Hours later, Earth's orbital space became crowded with giants, destroyers, fleet carriers, medical cruisers, supply vessels, heavy escorts. Hundreds of armored ships drifted into precise formation while countless smaller shuttles darted between them, like determined insects preparing an impossible task. Families watched from planetary observation centers. Some cried, some saluted. Nobody cheered. There was too much uncertainty for celebration. Inside the bridge of the Resolute, every station reported green status. Slip space navigation aligned. Formation synchronized. Medical teams secured. Weapons powered, not for conquest, but because hope sometimes required protection. Marcus opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice remained calm. No promises. Thousands listened. No guarantees. Silence filled every ship. Someone called for help. He looked toward the stars. We answered. Outside the flagship, blue-white energy rippled across the fleet as hundreds of slipspace engines awakened together. Space itself seemed to bend beneath impossible power. Massive armored hulls disappeared behind expanding waves of distorted light. Far away, aboard the dying Valen's Hope, Captain Kellen stared once more at the silent stars. The bridge lights dimmed again. Life support reached its final emergency cycle. No one aboard knew that, at that exact moment, humanity's greatest fleet was already crossing the darkness toward them. Between the refugees and salvation remained only the vast emptiness of space, and whatever enemy still waited beyond it. The bridge of Valen's Hope had become so quiet that the only constant sound was the slow rhythm of failing machinery. Frost spread across the inside's edges of the observation window as the environmental systems surrendered another section of the ship to the cold. Captain Kalen no longer checked the life support display every few minutes. The numbers had become meaningless. He knew exactly how many hours remained because he could see it in the faces around him. Dr. Saris walked through the refugee decks carrying the last emergency nutrient packs. There were only enough for the children. Every adult accepted the decision without protest. Parents smiled at their sons and daughters while secretly pretending they were not hungry. One elderly woman quietly slipped her own ration into the hands of a young engineer before collapsing against the corridor wall from exhaustion. Little Lyra tugged at Esris's sleeve. "Doctor, are we going to disappear?" Saris forced a tired smile. "No, But everyone keeps saying goodbye. The doctor knelt despite aching knees. Sometimes people say goodbye because they're afraid. That doesn't mean hope is gone. Lyra looked toward the frozen viewport. I hope somebody heard us. More than 20 light years away, the human rescue fleet tore through slip space. Unlike elegant alien vessels, the human warships looked like moving fortresses. Thick armored hulls, exposed structural ribs, enormous heat radiators, and engines powerful enough to drag entire stations if necessary. They had been designed by engineers who expected everything to fail except the crew. On the bridge of the flagship Resolute, Commander Marcus Hale studied the tactical display. Distance, 8 minutes to emergence, medical carriers, ready, escort wings, standing by. Marcus folded his hands behind his back. No one fires unless I give the order. The tactical officer looked surprised. Even if hostile vessels are present? Marcus answered without raising his voice. We came to rescue civilians. A brief silence followed. We'll remember that before anyone else does. Blue-white fracks spread across empty space. 1 became 10. 10 became hundreds. Then reality opened. The human fleet arrived. Gigantic, block-like ships emerged from slip space in perfect formation, their armored silhouettes eclipsing entire starfields. Massive carrier hulls unfolded communication arrays while destroyers spread outward like steel guardians. Hospital ships activated brilliant white navigation lights instead of combat strobes. The refugee vessel's sensors awakened automatically. Unknown contacts. Unknown contacts, unknown contacts, 217. Bridge officer Nira stared in horror. So many. Captain Kalen slowly stood. No fleet this large comes for mercy. Every survivor aboard expected the final chapter of their lives to begin. Instead, a calm voice filled every communication channel. This is Human Expeditionary Rescue Fleet. The transmission paused. You requested humanitarian assistance. Another pause. We are here. Nobody aboard Valen's Hope spoke. Several simply cried. On the flagship, Marcus watched long-range scans reveal the refugee vessel in terrible detail. Hull breaches, engine collapse, power loss, thousands of emergency patches welded across ancient armor. His jaw tightened. They've been like this for weeks, the medical commander answered quietly. Probably longer. Marcus didn't hesitate. Launch every rescue shuttle. Hundreds of armored dropships detached simultaneously. They weren't graceful. They accelerated with brutal efficiency toward the dying refugee carrier. When the first human shuttle connected with the airlock, silence filled both sides of the hatch. Captain Kalen stood surrounded by his remaining security officers. Every weapon they possessed was aimed at the sealed door, not because they expected victory, only because dignity demanded they stand. The locking mechanisms disengaged. Steam drifted into the corridor. Heshy footsteps echoed through the passage. 1, 2, 3. Out of the mist emerged figures unlike anything the refugees had imagined. Humans, broad shoulders wrapped in dark armored rescue suits. Medical insignias painted beside military markings. Faces marked by fatigue from an emergency deployment across impossible distances. Their leader removed his helmet first. Commander Marcus Hale, gray hair, weathered face, calm eyes. He slowly raised empty hands. My name is Marcus. No weapon appeared, no threat followed. Only one question. Where are you wounded? Captain Kalen blinked. What? Marcus repeated himself. You're wounded. For several seconds, Kalen could only stare. Finally, he lowered his rifle. There are too many. Marcus nodded once and touched his communicator. Medical teams, his voice remained steady. Everywhere. Human medics flooded into the corridors carrying stretchers, oxygen systems, portable surgical units, warming blankets, water containers, and emergency food. Nobody shouted. Nobody panicked. Each team moved with practiced discipline. Dr. Elena Vasquez reached the medical compartment and immediately understood the nightmare. Her alien counterpart looked barely able to stand. You've been working alone? Saris nodded weakly. 19 days. Elena gently took the exhausted doctor's trembling hands. You've done enough. Saris tried to protest. My patients? They're ours now, too. The alien physician collapsed into tears. Elena caught her before she hit the floor. Elsewhere aboard the ship, human engineers attacked broken machinery with relentless determination. Portable reactors replaced dead power systems. Emergency oxygen generators roared to life. Heating returned deck by deck. For the first time in weeks, warm air flowed through the corridors. Children laughed because they could finally see their own breath disappear. Human cooks established mobile kitchens inside cargo bays. Fresh soup replaced emergency rations. One enormous Marine quietly removed his armored gloves before handing a bowl to Lyra. It's hot, she stared. You made this? He smiled. We make better food back home. She tasted one spoonful and burst into tears. It tastes alive. The Marine looked away before anyone noticed, his own eyes becoming wet. Captain Kalen followed Marcus through the restored sections of the ship. I don't understand. Marcus glanced toward workers repairing another bulkhead. What? You crossed unknown space, risking your fleet for people you've never met. Marcus considered the question carefully. Back on Earth, storms don't ask who deserves saving. Kalen frowned. What do you mean? Hurricanes destroy rich neighborhoods and poor ones equally. Marcus smiled faintly. When disaster comes, humans don't stop to negotiate. The alien captain looked across the corridor where a young human medic carefully tucked a blanket around one of the refugee children. You truly expected nothing in return? Marcus answered immediately, no. Hope had finally returned, which made the next alarm all the more terrifying. A sharp warning tone echoed across every human bridge. Long-range sensors detected gravitational distortions, slip-space ruptures, 1, 3, 7, then dozens. The tactical officer's face turned pale. Commander. Marcus looked toward the display. Enemy signatures, heavy dreadnought-class vessels, closing fast. The same fleet that had hunted the refugees had returned to finish the job. Without raising his voice, Marcus gave his first combat order. Recall every shuttle. Another. Medical ships fall back. Then one final command, all combat vessels. Outside, hundreds of human warships accelerated simultaneously. Massive armored hulls moved between the approaching enemy armada and the helpless refugee ship. Steel, armor, resolve. An unbroken wall stretched across the darkness. Commander Marcus Hale watched the enemy fleet continue its advance. His expression never changed, formed the shield. Every human ship acknowledged. The line held. And for the first time since entering the Warzone, the enemy realized they would have to go through Earth before they could touch a single refugee. The enemy fleet emerged from slip space in disciplined formation. Black dreadnoughts drifted across the stars, their weapon arrays unfolding like mechanical predators preparing for the final strike. Their commander expected frightened refugees. Instead, every targeting system locked onto a solid wall of human warships. The bridge of the Resolute remained calm. Officers worked quietly as tactical displays updated every second. Commander Marcus Hale stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching hundreds of red markers approach. No one aboard needed a speech. Every sailor already understood why they had crossed the galaxy. A transmission arrived. The alien admiral appeared on the main screen, his expression cold and confident. You are interfering with an authorized military operation, Marcus replied without emotion. Those people are civilians. They belong to a hostile species. They are under our protection. The admiral narrowed his eyes. Move your fleet. Marcus shook his head once. No. Silence settled between the two commanders. The alien finally spoke again. You are willing to start a war over strangers? Marcus looked through the viewport toward the damaged refugee vessel. We are willing to prevent one. The transmission ended. Throughout the human fleet, armored crews prepared for battle, heavy blast doors sealed. Damage control teams stood beside emergency equipment. Pilots climbed into interceptors. Medical staff converted cargo bays into overflow trauma wards, hoping they would never be needed. On the refugee ship, Captain Kalen watched the human vessels arrange themselves into overlapping defensive lines. They're exposing themselves, he whispered. Every enemy firing solution would hit human ships first, not by accident, by choice. Dr. Sarah stood beside Elena Vasquez inside the restored medical bay. Human nurses moved from patient to patient despite the battle warning echoing through every deck. You should return to your own ship, Sarah said. Elena smiled while adjusting an oxygen mask on a sleeping child. I still have patients here. You could die. So could they. The alien physician had spent her life believing strength meant surviving alone. Watching the humans work, she discovered another definition. Strength was refusing to abandon someone simply because danger had arrived. Outside, hundreds of targeting lasers swept across the human fleet, missile tubes armed, rail cannons charged, energy reactors climbed toward combat output. Then, something unexpected happened. The enemy admiral hesitated. His tactical officers began reporting impossible numbers. The humans outmass us. Their armor ratings exceed projections. They are not withdrawing. Our simulations predict catastrophic losses. Another officer quietly added the detail that changed. Everything. They have not targeted civilian ships. The admiral stared at the display. Every human weapon remained locked exclusively on military targets. Not one aimed at an escape pod. Not one at a medical carrier. Not one at the refugee transport hidden behind the steel wall. They had crossed the galaxy carrying enough firepower to erase fleets. Yet every decision they made centered on protecting lives. The admiral understood something his government never had. An enemy willing to die for strangers was impossible to intimidate. Minutes passed, no one fired. Finally, the alien dreadnoughts began turning away. One after another, their slipspace drives activated. The stars swallowed them. The battle ended without a single shot. Relief spread across every human bridge, but no celebration followed. Engineers immediately resumed repairing the refugee vessel, while hospital ships transferred the critically injured into advanced surgical facilities. Commander Marcus Hale finally allowed himself a slow breath. His communications officer smiled. We did it! Marcus looked toward the departing enemy signatures. No. He watched rescue shuttles continue carrying frightened families towards safety. They did. The journey to the refugees' homeworld lasted several days. During that time, human mechanics rebuilt engines that should never have flown again. Doctors worked through endless shifts. Marines helped children learn games using empty ration containers and magnetic tools. The towering soldiers who looked terrifying in armor turned out to be remarkably patient storytellers. Little Lyra spent most evenings sitting beside one enormous human engineer. "Is Earth really dangerous?" she asked. He laughed softly. "Oh, absolutely. Then why do you smile when you talk about it?" He looked toward the stars. "Because it's home." When the convoy finally entered orbit around the refugees' world, every communication channel became overwhelmed. Families recognized missing relatives. Cities illuminated their skylines. Millions gathered beneath the night sky to watch unfamiliar human ships descend beside the battered refugee carrier. Captain Kalen walked down the landing ramp with unsteady legs. His sister was waiting. Neither spoke. They simply embraced. Around them, thousands of reunions unfolded. Children ran into waiting arms. Parents collapsed in tears. Entire generations who believed each other dead stood together once more beneath the morning light. Human crews quietly loaded their equipment back onto transports. They had not come for recognition. They had come because someone needed help. Later that evening, representatives from dozens of star systems watched a live Galactic broadcast. Captain Kalen stood before countless cameras. For several moments, he could not speak. Finally, he found his voice. When our distress signal was ignored, he paused. We believed the galaxy had forgotten what compassion meant. The image changed to exhausted human medics carrying alien children through smoke-filled corridors. We feared the Deathworlders because we were told they were monsters. Another image appeared. Human engineers repairing failing life support systems. Marines giving away their own meals. Doctors refusing to rest. Kalen smiled through tears. We were wrong. The strongest civilization we have ever encountered measured its power not by how many worlds it could conquer, but by how many lives it refused to leave behind. Across countless systems, silence filled homes, military headquarters, and government chambers alike. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its fleet. It had been the people inside it. Months later, Commander Marcus Hale visited listening station Kestrel once again. Officer Maya Alvarez greeted him with a familiar smile. "The emergency frequencies are quiet today," Marcus nodded. "Good." She looked at the old recording that had changed history. "I almost missed it." Marcus stared through the observation window toward the endless stars. "Someone out there won't." He turned to leave, then stopped. "If another voice ever reaches us," Maya finished the sentence for him, "we'll answer." Marcus smiled. "Exactly." Beyond Earth's restless skies, humanity continued listening. Not because they expected gratitude, not because they sought glory, but because somewhere in the darkness, another frightened voice might whisper a final plea for help. And if that day ever came, the answer would be the same as it had always been. "Hold on. We are coming."